Welcome to season 2 of Riding the Showbiz Wave. Yes, we're back after an incredible reaction to season, I should say, number 1.
I think we agreed that I called it season and you call it series.
I can't remember what we agreed.
We couldn't
When
get out.
series 1, we probably agreed on a lot of things that we completely contradicted. But I'm very happy to be back chatting to my mate Drew Masters, exquisite composer, producer, and a man of many, many talents. And we will be riding the showbiz wave, falling off every now and then, just having a chit chat about what's going on out there in a bit of music, a bit of books.
A bit more controversial, I think, than last season.
Yeah, we eased ourselves in. That's a good way of putting it. We eased ourselves in, and now we can look at things and, without any real fear of lawsuit, libel, and the rest.
Physical reprisals.
Physical reprisals, especially.
So just
I know where you live.
Fabulous. So things I wanted to talk about this week. Well, we've brought some subjects each. I want to talk about the new Simon Cowell documentary on Netflix, The Next Act.
That'll be a brief conversation.
It won't, or it might.
Okay. Interesting.
So, and then you want to talk about Eurovision, and obviously this is very topical this week with the new British entry having been chosen.
Yeah, that's one of my favourite subjects.
And then we'll finish up on something more of a positive, talking a little bit about the rise of the female self-starters, as I'm calling them, singer-songwriters, self-produced, self-promoted female artists, particularly in Britain. I'm really interested in what a phenomenon that's become. So that's what we're going to talk about. Let's start with Simon Cowell.
The more retentative listener will remember we made mention of Simon in the first
episode,
and because I was lauding him for the fact that at least he created some kind of story with pop stars and pop stardom, and obviously the X Factor is not on telly, and we're so I think I made a reference that we come back, Simon, all is good. Well, he has come back.
He has, and it's really interesting because I was quite excited about this new series, and I said to the whole family, let's sit down and watch this, and they were all a bit like, ugh. And I was like, no, this is going to be great. It's going to be really interesting and really fun.
I found it mostly unwatchable in terms of TV. I would be very interested in what you thought about what it really was. I mean, look, it's a Simon Cowell reality show, and he missed out on the franchise of Real Housewives as a for reasons I know not, but that's really what I think he wanted to be. It is what it is. I'm surprised that Netflix picked it up with such enthusiasm, because the actual process of meeting and creating this boy band I thought was pretty poor. Covered very poor, very, very dated in terms of auditions, and really excruciating.
I think it's really interesting. Netflix, I can see why they would pick it up, because he's a big name. And, if you think about what's the last band he put together, I think of One Direction.
Yeah.
I mean, that and Harry Styles, that's pretty good.
Well, you've preempted what really is going to happen, because I feel there are 7 members of this boy band, right? 6 of those are already, or they're probably already thinking, goodness me, how long is this going to last? And looking over each other's shoulders saying, who's going to be the chosen one?
Yeah.
And I think that that's inevitable.
Yeah, I agree. I think, going to the format, as I say, I was really excited about it. And I struggled to get through the first 20 minutes. And I pretty much struggled to get through the first episode. And I think that there are a number of things that I've identified that I think are wrong with it, really seriously wrong with the format. And the first is that it is just all about Simon. And, when we make these sorts of programs, the first thing we want to do is, well, we cast them. So we cast the people that are in it. With a program like this, you can't really cast. You do cast at the audition stage by, you have a bunch of producers working out who's going to go through and actually sing in front of Simon, etc. But you can only work with who turns up. You can't go out and look for these people. Well, that again, it's not strictly true. We know that from X Factor and Britain's Got Talent. They do have people scouting. But it's, by the time you meet that talent, you've already had half the first episode, and the whole first half of that episode is all about Simon. And the jeopardy of the show is, have I lost my touch? Can I still do it? It's all about me, me, me. And I don't care. I literally, I'm sorry, Simon, but I don't give a shit. You've made it. You've had your time. You're living in your beautiful villa. What's the jeopardy for me as a viewer? There isn't any.
I mean, it was always going to be this way, and I think that does, unfortunately, paint a fairly also unedifying picture of ego and everything that involves in this business. But yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't very exciting, and I also thought, and now watching the process of the band started to get public. I mean, the first image I saw was actually on the cover of Music Week, the trade magazine. Beautiful colour picture of the band, and Simon was in the middle of the band.
Yeah.
And I thought that just summed it up for me.
And he's had so much press on this. I mean, he got, Radio 1 behind him, trying to get people to come down and audition. I mean, he's done so well with the free publicity on this. He's obviously paid for a lot of it with posters and things as well. But it's, you compare this show to Pop Star Academy, the Cat's Eye vehicle, which I don't remember if you've watched that, but I watched it religiously with my daughter, and you go straight in with rehearsals, with talent. You don't start with, some long preamble of them talking about we're going on this journey to see if we can put together an international band that can compete on a K-pop stage. They're just like in. It's the same with Boys Planet, which we may have mentioned before as well, which I watch, which is not even available on any kind of UK channel. It's I think my daughter watches it on Viki or something, or some app that you've obviously never heard of, and it's same thing. I mean, the way they structure these programs is like performance, talent, and then personality. And maybe some ego, but the ego's quite contained. It's more about personality.
Well, this is the polar opposite, isn't it? And that's what struck me. That there was so much noise being made about the individuals involved, from Cal down to his team to the actual boys themselves. And the actual record, the first single, was sort of came later in the piece, and that to me is just an anathema. I just can't imagine anyone. But unfortunately, that's the way of the world. So there was now a groundswell of people that are already going to buy into the track, regardless of how poor it was. And I thought it was a rather lazy choice, a cover version of a boy band hit.
Bye bye bye.
Bye.
I mean, I've seen the video on YouTube, and I don't know, because I didn't make it that far into the show. I have to confess, I couldn't watch it all. It's but I've seen quite a few clips, and I've heard a lot of people talking about it. So I've sort of caught up on the gossip aspects of it, and it's very weak. It's it's musically, production wise, vocally weak, and no better than some of those boys' original performances that they did when they came into audition, in my opinion. I would not.
I was just very disappointed. Very disappointed.
Well, disappointing sums it up.
But it's a system, a well-trodden routine path to identify the next Harry Styles, and how long the boys, all seven of them, will last together intact is baffling. Full disclosure, I know people who are involved who are very earnest and extremely good practitioners in this business. Listen, you've got to remember that we are old bastards, and there may be the odd, young person who completely disagrees and probably has never heard the original version of Bye-Bye. You've got to remember that.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I just think it was an incredibly weak choice, and a weak production, really disappointing. And at the same time, they are slagging off BTS, saying that they're not that good. I mean, are you kidding me? Probably, possibly the biggest band in the world, but it's only one of them. Really proven, unbelievably hardworking, incredibly talented, and you might not like them, but you can't say that.
I wonder why 7. I mean, £100 split 7 ways ain't a great deal of money. I was baffled at that. Really, it's such an odd number. And equally, what a weird name of a group.
Yeah, it's well, they're also being sued at the moment, aren't they, by a Scottish band called December 10, who
I was not aware
want
of
their
that.
name back.
No,
I'm afraid that's true. I mean, they'll settle in some way, but yeah. So it's not even original.
well,
I guess it's I guess the thinking was 1D, D10.
okay. You're giving him far greater credit than I think it deserves. We shouldn't be too cynical, but we were speaking really earlier on about what podcasts are being successful, and you mentioned true crime. Well, I would attest that perhaps this project is a genuinely true crime against the music industry.
I think it's disappointing on lots of levels. I was really hoping the show would be fun and would be a return to that. Let's genuinely find some talent. There's tons of talent out there. We could see in some of those auditions, some of those guys that come along and they're the first thing they sing. You're like, wow, okay, this is good.
And it's very interesting. So I think we're going to go on to talk about female singer-songwriter success, certainly British and some American. And it's very interesting. Whilst I think and talk about this boy band, there's something very, I'm constantly excited to see the next great female British singer, or the success thereof. Olivia's Dean and Rodri and all the rest of them, which I think we share, that we really, really love. There does seem to be something a bit more interesting about them, but we will no doubt discuss that.
Yeah. And I'm going to finish up on the Simon Cowell thing with the quote that one of the boys said, which is, never mind selling out Wembley, we could sell out Pluto. To which I think they cut out the reply of one of the other boys, which is, that's because there's no one on Pluto.
Again, I hadn't heard that quote, but God bless them. I just thought, and as I said, I thought it was a very dated format, and I think that kids are a bit more switched on these days. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not obsessed on I don't know what they do on TikTok. I'm sure they're everywhere. I'm sure their numbers are very impressive.
Actually, I looked it up before we started recording, and I couldn't really find any data. I mean, it's quite hard to find data on that sort of stuff. It didn't look like they were setting the world alight, but they're just starting out. I think give them some time. Let's see. They're talented boys. Let's see if they can do something. I think that this will come back to our conversation about the self-starting female singer-songwriters in a bit, which is they are the complete opposite in that they are not in control of any element of what they're doing. And when that happens, you lose authenticity, but you also you're relying on probably some old men like us controlling your narrative. It's a very risky strategy.
Terribly risky. Especially, well, actually, no, people have relied on my strategy for many years, some of which have had a fair amount of success.
But everyone you've worked with has had enormous amounts of talent, because otherwise they, and certainly is to a large extent controlling that talent. What you're doing is guiding them.
Yeah, that's very true. There has to be an innate, not only talent, but also a thought process that you want to go to certain places and take a certain route, direction. And again, take me outside and shoot me if you're using it, but your journey is your own.
Yeah.
And it's not prescribed. And I use the word authenticity. We have to ban certain words: authenticity, journey, and I'm sure there are a load of others. We'll think of a glossary of terms that we absolutely should not use. But it's all good fun. It's all good fun. I have been quite interested in that Deck 10 or D10 journey, and I'll be watching it very closely.
Yeah, me too. Good. Well, Eurovision.
We definitely touched on this. Did we touch on it last year? I hope we did.
We did. I feel like I may have cut quite a lot of it out because
well, if it was omitted, it was probably because I was vocalizing a diatribe against the BBC, who I think.
Well, I think this is what's really interesting about it, because I am baffled really as to why this is all done behind closed doors and why our entry's chosen behind closed doors.
It never used to be. Used to be good old battle of the bands, and I think that's, I think it's absolutely tragic that is now gone. Behind closed doors says everything to me, and I think it's been like that for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I think it has.
I mean, the Eurovision in general is slightly a tricky area because 4 or 5 major contributors and countries are refusing to perform for political reasons. But regardless of that,
yeah, I think this year is going to be quite tricky. If it was me, if I was organising, I think I'd probably cancel it for a year.
it might be, like Glastonbury, have a fallow year, and try and collect your thoughts. Because frankly, if we're going down the road,
refertilise the soil,
but also get some sense. I mean, again, you have to ask, what do the BBC really want to achieve? They, I think, and by the way, we may have touched this. There are some things about the BBC that I absolutely love, treasure, adore, and feel very passionate about. And sadly, there are things that the BBC gets so terribly wrong. They do not read the room. They do not read.
They self-sabotage and all sorts.
And I think this latest, they've made a decision that this year's entry will be a somewhat, what's the best word? An odd-looking, odd-sounding, guy. I'm sure he's a lovely fella. I don't actually know his name.
I think he's great.
He goes under the guise of
Look Mum No Computer.
Look Mum No Computer, LMNC, for those of you who are interested. I've listened to a bit of his output, which again, because it's I would say, is it exclusive electronic?
I think so, although he's classified as a sort of indie rock artist, which is kind of weird. But
So I think BBC have chosen, he's not young. He's not, he's not massively communicative in his output. I don't think his following is that huge.
I mean, it's quite.
So they can't blame that.
But it's quite niche. I mean, look, the last video of his that I watched was him modifying an old Moog synthesizer and working his way through the electronic schematics and adding a switch in so he could do some
Can I just stop you there?
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. Is that going to appeal to a family?
I guess
and kids.
I guess my thinking would be that if he brings a good song and a good performance, what's the difference between that and someone with zero backstory, which a lot of these people have? I mean, really, at least he has a backstory. He has a personality. He's an interesting guy. He's really clever.
He's probably a terribly nice guy.
I think he seems very nice, very
terrible. I feel terrible saying that, but
I think he's a really odd choice. But I kind of like it because nothing we've done, seems to have worked.
I understand. I understand why you might like and admire him, because and may as well explain to the listener. Drew is obsessed with everything that is synthesized within the recording studio.
I might be a bit of a geek.
Yeah, and he probably is the true definition of a geek. But leaving that aside, I think, given and in very general terms, what people are doing and how people consume what people like and how they're getting to like it, this pretty much goes against the grain, because he's not a social media star. He's not, one would say classically beautifully appealing in pop star terms. No offense, buddy.
I'm gonna hold off judgment till I see the performance of the song, because we haven't heard the song yet.
I don't see him performing a Sabrina Carpenter choreo, my friend.
But I don't see the United Kingdom winning Eurovision with a Sabrina Carter type act. I think that's our problem, is that we think that we're competing with, we're trying to create better music or better perform. I think actually if we took, the attitude that some of the countries take, which is to have a load of fun with it, we might actually have more luck.
Now, I don't wish to be pedantic, but you've abbreviated Sabrina Carpenter into Sabrina Carter, and I rather like.
Did I do that?
You did. You sort of missed out the pen.
Did I?
So Carpenter.
I'll cut it in later.
Sabrina Carter.
I don't know how I did that.
Yeah, well, listen.
I've never heard of Sabrina Carter.
Sabrina.
I know Sean Carter.
Sabrina Carpenter is now Sabrina Carter because you didn't have time.
I was too bored. Her name was too long. Get on with it.
But, with the greatest respect, I think that if we did have a band that had some choreography like Sabrina Carpenter, we may actually end up in the top 5. I'm very, very down on the Eurovision output of late from the United Kingdom. I think it's been and it has been appalling. Unfortunately, they vote. The votes have proven that.
I think we've had some okay ones actually, and I think that I just think that people just aren't that interested. I think they expect something more from the UK. I think they also think that, we do pretty well on the world stage and maybe favour, acts that are a little bit more.
But again, going back to the BBC's involvement here, the BBC need a moment. They haven't had a moment, really. Forget Jubilee celebrations and all the raw, and Strictly in its pomp was a real moment for the BBC. Now, I'm probably 2012 Olympics. I can't remember in the last Doctor Who, but that's now suffering. The BBC needs a big, high five hit. Yes, we did this. And I think the opportunity using Eurovision rather cynically as its platform to do this is a huge one. And I'm just surprised that they have conspired to make it a rather odd and esoteric outing.
As I say, the thing that bothers me the most, I think, is exactly using your word, conspired. The conspiracy of who is choosing these songs and why is it being done in such a secretive way? Why not open up that process and make it more transparent?
I mean, or at least ask the most successful people in the British music industry to contribute. I think that's an oversight, but let's see.
Good. Well, we've done Eurovision again for now, and we've probably talked about this again when we hear the song.
That's terrible because we do. We go on a lot about. It's all about the talent and the track and the song. We haven't even heard the song yet. Well, we've become just cynical old.
Well, I would say you have, yeah, definitely.
I've become cynical. I'd never set out to do that.
No, I'm the same. I think we've reached a point where we call it when we see it, and I think we can see them just going down a rabbit hole of more mistakes, and why not just open this up to the public again, make it a public vote? Don't get it. Moving on. So yeah, I really wanted to sort of talk a little bit about these self-starters. There's a bunch of people at the moment. I know you were talking to me recently about Sky Newman and your thoughts on her. And I think it's really interesting because, her stuff is quite varied, but some of it does sound very Adele. It's very much, she sounds very much like Adele. And I was thinking, wow, that sort of seems odd. And yet when you actually think about it, the stuff of Adele's that she sounds like was 15 years ago. So actually it's not, that surprising in a way or that odd. She's, got influences of Amy Winehouse, all of those sort of people. There's a lot of female singers around with those influences. And it's interesting that you used to have a situation where people would say, well, we've got one Adele. We don't need another Adele. We need someone else, something different. We've got one Amy. I feel like at the moment, no one's really saying that. And I guess that's because a lot of these people are independent. So the people I'm thinking about are Erin LeCount, who I've mentioned to you before, and Sienna Spiro. I mean, Pink Pantheress, very different type of thing, but again, self-starter and self-esteem to an extent. I feel like self-esteem's kind of opened the way a bit for those artists. I mean, she did it in a very different way. So she was in a band. I don't know if you know her, Rebecca Lucy Taylor. She's an incredible artist. I love her work.
Self-esteem.
Yeah,
Love Self-Esteem, and had a couple of really strong tracks. Really, and I haven't heard a lot about her, but really liked her.
so I came across her when I was on the board at PRS, and we host, I still say we, even though I'm no longer on the board, we host Attend at Glastonbury every year. And as part of that, a lot of the acts who are performing there come and do little small acoustic gigs for us, or just small gigs. And there's only sort of 40, 50 people there, and it's really fantastic, really intimate and amazing. And the year I went, which was 22, Self-Esteem came and did a set. And I didn't really know her stuff that well. She'd been around for a while, but I wasn't that familiar with it. And she blew me away. I mean, she was incredible. And the next day she was playing at the John Peel tent, and I went with a bunch of people to go and see her. We couldn't even get in the tent. And every single person there knew every word to every song. It was absolutely phenomenal. But it's really interesting looking at her story. When she left the band that she was in, she was playing around with the idea of the name Self-Esteem. She started posting things on her Instagram account. She started posting visuals around the words self-esteem. She did some artworks, and she approached it from a kind of artist focus, and sort of sought some responses from people. I don't know that she would have changed it if everyone had said we hate it, but she certainly engaged with people and built up some of her fan base through that. She already had a fan base as well. So it's quite interesting, but I do feel that there's something about her work that feels like it's really empowered a lot of young female singer-songwriters. And I'm sure there are many others as well. So Sky Newman, I mean, she is absolutely phenomenal. She's got an amazing voice. She's, posted on TikTok. She's a self-starter. She writes a lot of her stuff. She co-writes as well, but she writes. A lot of these people have labels. They're not just completely independent. But Erin LeCount posting relentlessly on TikTok, built a huge following. Coincidentally, I went online today. She's playing at the Roundhouse in May. That's a big capacity venue, and I went on at 10 o'clock. When they opened up the ticket sales, and I got in a queue, and I managed to get some tickets. But there's a queue of people to get her tickets, and a lot of people have never heard of her.
No, that, and I certainly haven't heard her music.
But she's phenomenal, and she's definitely in that world of I would say she's sort of somewhere between Florence and the Machine and Billie Eilish, and she's in, her music is passionate and intense, and when she sings, she's so believable. You really believe every word she's singing. You believe that means everything to her, and it's very difficult. There aren't that many people who can communicate in that way. Lots of people can sing well, but to really make you feel the passion of what they're singing, she's a phenomenon.
There is a real, there's a rich vein out of the UK of these wonderful female songwriters. They may not all write their own songs, but and Sky Newman, she was announced as, I think, a face of 2026.
Yeah,
Radio 1,
BBC, yeah.
BBC, and all of a sudden thinking, okay, have I heard him? And I had heard Family Matters, which is I think her first, big-ish track. But then
she's done plenty before.
Yeah, stuck into that, and she's really sassy, and looks great. I have to say, from an image point of view, fantastic. There's another, I would say, pop star called Mimi Webb, who again looks fantastic. You know, my background, and I place a lot of emphasis on the look, the imaging, but there must be more than that because of their followings. And I think they're very interesting, and I think that they, you know, young girls aspire to be them, and I think that's so important.
And I think that all comes from that whole sort of self-esteem world of you know, being honest in your lyrics, but also being strong and empowering the next generation of people. I think it's really interesting. I mean, you know, Pink Pantheress as well started by posting a load of stuff. She was making stuff in GarageBand and then
She's been around a while, hasn't she?
Yeah. But she really broke during COVID because, you know, she was just posting. I think that for a lot of people, it gave them an opportunity and also just no other alternative but to post online.
What's great is they're selling out venues and they're probably making a couple of quid that can pay for certain things.
They really are.
Record. And that's you know, is one of the huge positives about.
But I think what's also interesting is
online marketing.
Yeah. But I think also what's interesting is that traditionally, you know, going back to, you know, maybe when we started out, but even not that long ago, 10, 20 years ago, if you were a female artist, you would almost certainly be treated as a singer, maybe a co-writer if you must, but you would be placed in a room with other writers, producer, you know, no one would expect you to be sitting at home on your computer creating this work. And I think that's what's really changed and I've seen it in the TV and film world, where I could tell you 10, 15 years ago, there were probably half a dozen female composers active in the industry. There's just dozens. I'm certainly seeing so many female singer-songwriters who are producing their own stuff. I think it's brilliant. It's much more interesting. It's really authentic, going back to that word that we now banned. You can't ban authentic.
Well, you can.
Can't really, but you can.
But no, you touched the point. They're interesting. There is something, you know, innately interesting about, you know, these young lasses who get up there, you know, and it's quite a ballsy thing to do. Get up there, sort of sling a guitar around your neck, and Maisie Peters, another one.
Mm-hmm. But this goes back to actually something that we've said before about talent, and I say this all the time, is that, you know, it's quite easy to, you know, sling a few loops together and make a pretty convincing dance track and sound like you're
talk about Ed Sheeran like that.
Dream a bit. He's a very good musician. I mean, his guitar playing is amazing. Have you seen those videos of him when he was like 16?
No, I think he's wonderful.
Yeah, no, he's amazing musician. Anyway, but that's my point. My point is that you can sling a bit of stuff together and sound quite professional. But if you've got that real underlying talent, then you're a proper artist. And that's what a lot of these people have got, what all these people on that list that have got, is that they are really, you know, they can all play, they can all sing, they can all produce. They really know what they're doing. And I think that is why, you know, we're seeing this kind of rise of that, you know, say self-starting indie artist.
But that begs the question, where are the guys? Where are the blokes?
I think they're out there, and it's a very good point.
Where are they? Where, I mean, where is the next slew of bands? Well, where's the next, dare I say it, 1975? I haven't heard it. I mean, you know, I don't listen to everything, but a decent band, you know? I mean, I have to say, I read that U2 are putting new music out, releasing a 6-track EP.
Bless them.
Yeah.
Bless them for that.
I mean, look, don't get me wrong, I'm one of the biggest U2 fans you could ever meet, but I cannot wait to hear it.
Who's going to play it? Radio 2?
Well, yes, and my immediate answer is yes, I would think absolutely definitely.
I mean, they release a great, you know, indie rock, I don't know what you call their music these days, but if they release a great modern sounding record, will Radio 1 play it?
No, because their listenership is, you know, all under the age of 10, I think. No,
I listen, so I skew the average a little bit.
That again, you know, sound a bit, but that would be interesting to analyse how they do market this and whether they think they are online relevant bands. I mean, I guess
maybe we'll get, you know, The Edge at home cooking himself some breakfast or doing his hair.
Can you imagine? Yeah, At Home with the Edge.
I really, really want to do an impression, but I'm not going to because it'll just be offensive.
Bono, jet washing his patio. And by the way, to the sounds of his new track. Those transformation videos are quite something.
That brings us to probably our final thing that we want to talk about today, which is the possibly impending ban on social media for under 16s.
I think inevitable. I really do. The noises that I'm hearing is that it will probably be passed. Now, I have a couple of views on this. I think that some elements to it are that they are saying F you to the tech companies. We are going to take away a bit of your audience because you've done nothing to assist its online safety. I think there's an element of that, and I think that's great. I really do. I'm also extremely rather old-fashioned, slow everything down. I don't want 10-year-olds having access to everything, and really want 16-year-olds having access to everything. So if you can slow that process down, I think that's fantastic. But the challenge, or I suppose this is somewhat of a curveball for entertainment, marketing, record labels, because they've been using the access of the young listener.
Yeah.
And using it very successfully. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping and praying that record labels will think, do you know what? We're going to have to do this another way. God forbid we'll start doing junior discos or endorsing younger live events.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait for them to come up with, some proposals that will make it a real event to go and make an effort and see someone, and whoever they see justifies their £10 or £20 a ticket.
Well, so interestingly, Erin LeCount, who we were talking about earlier, was on The Voice Juniors, and in the final, and she was very young when she did that, and so that kind of reinforces what you're saying in terms of we might have to find different vehicles, but she and others on there. Sienna Spiro, I know, is posting from at least 16. So I guess you could argue that wouldn't have affected her being able to post. But I mean, the people following her, I'm sure a lot of them are much younger.
Much younger. And I must admit, I'm not so troubled by statewide or nationwide regulation in this form. I think we have got a bit.
Well, I've got a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old, as you know, so it's going to affect them directly. I think what I'd like to see is, all this AI that's threatening everyone's jobs. Why don't we just train it to take away all the bad stuff? I've always thought this, that if you don't want bad stuff on the web, legislate to make sure the people that supply the web, like your internet service provider, etc., are responsible for filtering it out. It's not that hard.
Well, that of course has been my position, using whatever technology is available. Sadly, I believe, and this is my personal belief, that the argument about free speech has no merit here at all. You've got to put some guardrails in, and I'm actually quite pleased. Australia seemed to have not suffered from it. I don't think anyone seems to be up in arms. And if these tech companies see some negativity, if you can't beat them, join it, do something to help. I think they've been very lazy in over the last 20 years about this, and you can understand why.
Yeah.
And especially now that they have personalities behind the big billionaire should be held to account. And if this can penalise him in some way, I'm fine with that. So that was a very interesting little chat. Hope it ticks some boxes. We'll be coming back on a weekly basis to review whatever comments that have been thrown our way.
Do feel free to comment, and if you think that we're talking bollocks about something, just tell us, and we'll go and do some proper research on it.
Yeah, I imagine most of those comments will fulfil that particular criteria. But I don't think talking bollocks is all a negative. It's kept me. It's a very, very fruitful career.